Imagine a calm, warm summer night in 1942. The ocean breeze sweeps across the American Gulf Coast. Civilians sleep soundly, believing the horrors of the Second World War are thousands of miles away, isolated on the war-torn battlefields of Europe and the distant Pacific. The navigational lights of Florida burn brightly, casting a welcoming glow across the water. But beneath this tranquil surface, an invisible nightmare is already lurking. A silent, steel predator has breached the sanctuary of American waters. It is cold, calculated, and ready to unleash devastation right on the nation's doorstep. This is the untold story of the Nazi U-boats that stalked the Gulf of Mexico, turning a peaceful shoreline into a watery graveyard. The date is June 29, 1942. It is just past midnight. The massive 8,000-ton British steam tanker HMS Empire Mica is cruising steadily east toward Key West, Florida. Aboard are 47 men, unaware that they are sailing into a trap. Deep within the ship's massive hull sits 11,200 tons of highly combustible kerosene. The crew believes they are safe in these shallow coastal waters, preparing to eventually join a convoy to the United Kingdom. Little do they know, barely half a mile away in the pitch-black ocean, the 250-foot German submarine U-67 has already locked them in its sights. The hunter is holding its breath. Around 1 a.m., the deafening silence of the night is shattered. U-67 fires 2 torpedoes in rapid succession. They slice through the dark water like silver arrows, striking the Empire Mica with catastrophic precision. Instantly, the dark horizon is engulfed in an apocalyptic fireball. Giant plumes of thick, choking black smoke violently erupt into the starry sky. A massive puddle of flaming oil bleeds from the ruptured hull, setting the very ocean on fire. The serene Gulf Coast has suddenly transformed into a burning hellscape. The sheer force of the blast echoes across the waves, a terrifying declaration that the war has arrived in America. Chaos reigns on the burning deck. Engineer Alex Green would later recall the sheer terror of that night, describing the desperate scramble to evacuate a ship that was rapidly becoming an inferno. The crew desperately lowers lifeboats into waters that are literally boiling with burning kerosene. The next thing I remember, we were rowing away as fast as we could, Green recalled. We couldn't see the ship from the smoke and flames. Amidst the smoke, the screams, and the blistering heat, only one lifeboat manages to break free from the inferno. Out of the 47 men who had been peacefully sailing just moments before, only 14 will survive the night. As the survivors row frantically into the darkness, a chilling scene unfolds behind them. The U-67 calmly surfaces through the smoke. The hatch opens, and German sailors spill onto the bridge of the submarine. They stand there, bathed in the sinister orange glow of the burning tanker, watching as the massive Allied ship slowly groans, breaks in two, and plunges beneath the waves to its final resting place, 110 feet below. One of the German sailors raises a camera and snaps a photograph, forever immortalizing the moment. It is a haunting, rare piece of evidence, proving that Nazi submarines were not just a distant threat. They were right here, watching America burn. The tragedy of the Empire Mica was not an isolated incident. It was part of a terrifying and highly coordinated initiative known as Operation Drumbeat. Unleashed in January 1942, just weeks after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the German High Command sought to choke the Allied war effort by cutting off its lifeline, commercial shipping. By May, the hunt expanded into the Gulf of Mexico. 24 ruthless German U-boats infiltrated the region, transforming the waters from Florida to Texas into a highly active combat zone. The battle for the Atlantic had spilled directly into the American backyard. In a brief, concentrated blitz of pure destruction, these underwater assassins wrought unimaginable havoc. Over the course of the campaign, German submarines torpedoed and sunk a staggering 56 Allied ships in the Gulf, crippling an additional 14. And the cost to the hunters? They lost only one submarine in the process. In the first few months, the Germans completely dominated the American coastline. Historians today still struggle to make the public fully comprehend the scale of the devastation. The Nazi war machine had effortlessly brought a completely unprepared United States to its knees. How could this happen? The terrifying truth is that America was completely blind to the danger. There were no enforced coastal blackouts, no naval escorts to protect the vulnerable, heavy-laden cargo ships. The lack of foresight was so astounding that it even shocked the German commanders. Harrow Schacht, the captain of U-507, wrote in his logbook with disbelief, "The Tortugas navigational lights burn as though it were for peacetime." By keeping their cities illuminated and their lighthouses shining, the Americans were perfectly silhouetting their own ships against the bright coastal glow, offering the U-boats an effortless, illuminated shooting gallery. The slaughter was compounded by a catastrophic intelligence failure. Between February and October of 1942, the Germans altered the anatomy of their infamous Enigma Cypher machines. Overnight, the Allies were struck deaf and blind. The codebreakers could no longer decipher the encrypted messages sent between the U-boats and the German command. Without the ability to track the submarines' movements, the Allied ships were sailing blind into waters swarming with invisible killers. The Gulf of Mexico quickly became the most dangerous body of water on the entire planet. The horror escalated on May 5, 1942, when U-507 targeted the tanker Munger T. Ball, about 80 miles northwest of Key West. The ship was a floating bomb, carrying 65,000 gallons of aviation gasoline. When the torpedo struck, the explosion defied description. Witnesses reported seeing a colossal mushroom cloud of fire erupting into the sky, reminiscent of an atomic blast. The massive tanker disintegrated and sank into the dark abyss within 15 minutes of the second torpedo hit, dragging its crew into a watery grave and evaporating critical fuel destined for the war in Europe. In a desperate bid to stop the bleeding, the United States deployed the Civil Air Patrol. This was a courageous but drastically under-equipped civilian volunteer pilots. Tasked with patrolling the vast waters from Maine to the Mexican border, they scoured the ocean surface for the dark silhouettes of German submarines. But these small planes were largely unarmed. They could watch, they could report, but they could not fight back. Throughout the entire Gulf campaign, not a single German U-boat was sunk by an airplane. The skies were heavily patrolled, but the steel leviathans beneath the waves remained untouchable. As the death toll mounted, the United States government made a controversial decision: absolute secrecy. The U.S. Office of Censorship placed a heavy blanket of silence over the press. The logic was twofold. First, to prevent widespread, uncontrollable panic among the coastal civilian population, and second, to keep the Germans in the dark about just how incredibly successful their campaign truly was. Newspapers were silenced, headlines were suppressed. This government-mandated blackout worked so well that it created a historical amnesia that persists to this very day. The blood spilled in the Gulf was washed away from the public consciousness. It's easy to understand how this nightmare faded into the shadows. While U-boats were indiscriminately slaughtering merchant ships in the Gulf, the eyes of the world were locked onto titanic, world-altering clashes. The devastating Battle of Midway, the brutal, freezing carnage of Stalingrad, the grueling amphibious assaults of Guadalcanal. Next to these monolithic events, the silent, terrifying war happening just miles off the beaches of Florida and Louisiana was reduced to mere a footnote in the grand tapestry of World War II history. But where official history goes silent, dark mythology takes over.
because the truth was hidden from the American public, bizarre urban legends began to sprout along the coast. Whispers echoed through coastal towns of dead German soldiers washing ashore on the shallow beaches of Tampa Bay. Rumors claimed these drowned invaders were found with American movie theater tickets and wrappers of local American bread stuffed in their pockets, suggesting they had secretly come ashore to mingle with the locals. While experts dismiss these tales as myth, they highlight the intense paranoia that gripped a nation unaware of the true danger. The true cost of the Gulf campaign was not measured solely in the chilling death toll of 600 Allied sailors and civilians. The genuine tragedy lay in the staggering loss of strategic resources. As some historians argue, the U-boat assault on American coastal waters constituted a far greater strategic setback for the Allied war effort than even the devastating Japanese strike on